Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the Assembly Hall, because it's time for another episode of Notes from School, the podcast, with me, James B. Partridge. I am your teacher for today, taking you back to that Assembly Hall. But that's not the only thing I'm going to take you back to this week, because we are going on a trip back in time for today's song. And you may guess from the title of this episode, but we're going to be going on a journey, not just back in time, but over the border of England into Scotland. But before we get there, I just want to say welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in again to an episode of Notes from School. And hopefully you've been enjoying the episodes. I've had a lot of very nice messages and comments and even reviews on Apple and Spotify and all that kind of stuff. So if you do like it, please do feel free to leave a 5-star review. And if you don't like it, then it's fine. Just send me a message personally. Now, let's get into it. Let's have a catch up. I hope you've had an amazing week, and I can't wait to get into it. So this week, it's been fun. And I, first of all, really loved doing the podcast last week with Give Me Oil in My Lamp. I hope you enjoyed singing along to that one. And wherever you were, had a message from someone saying they were down the gym and they started singing along. Someone said they were walking down the road. I think they actually said skipping down the road, and they were skipping down the road, singing along to Give Me Oil in My Lamp, which if more people did that in society, I think we'd have a happier run society. But there we go. That was Give Me Oil in My Lamp. And yeah, I've had a good week. Last week in the episode, I talked to you about going to the BET Educational Conference, which was good. And there was a speech from Bridget Phillipson, who was on before me, the day before me, and she talked about the use of AI in schools. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on AI in schools. I don't know if anyone listening to this also listens to the Two Mr. P's podcast, because they talk about that quite a lot, and how it can make workload a lot easier for teachers, and the positive aspects of it. But this is a music-themed podcast, I'd be interested to know if there were things that could be done in music education and in music teaching using AI. Let me know your thoughts on that. I think it would be interesting to, if you're teaching composition, maybe to see how AI software or AI could help with lyric writing for songs, for example, or maybe give you prompts on how to, well, actually, first of all, in terms of lessons, it will help with planning for teachers, but maybe you can think about how the pupils could interact with AI. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on that, and how that can positively affect teaching. I know that obviously a lot of us are slightly worried about the effects of AI on music in general. And by the way, just as a heads up, my cat is currently going nuts, and also there is a construction site across the road. So hopefully neither of those things will affect this. But my cat is currently running, literally jumping and running around the lights and everything. So everything might come crashing down halfway through the episode. But so yeah, I just mentioned the positive side to AI and how that can improve life in education. But there's also been some sad news this week in music education, in that the Cardiff University music department is closing. Now, this was met by most people saying how sad this was, a number of people saying how inevitable this was, and then obviously just whenever there's a post on Classic FM or one of those online platforms, there's always the trolls saying something like, well, this wasn't important anyway, close it all down and all this kind of stuff. But once you kind of filter through some of those comments, you got some interesting discussions there, because it's a really, really tricky thing with music education now, because a lot of the funding is coming out of music education generally, and I think there has to be something to be done in order to keep those opportunities alive for people. Obviously, there are still many opportunities for music degrees and courses around the country and around Wales and around the UK. But can something more be done to safeguard those courses against closures? Or is it just a case, well, it's the same really with A-levels and things like that? Because at my school, I remember even whenever it was I left school, 2009, there were not many people doing music anymore for A-level, and it was then a question of, should we even teach this if not many people are doing it? So that's another conversation that would be quite interesting to get into. So I was talking before about maybe getting guests on the podcast, so it could be interesting to get into some of these conversations with guests, and as well as kind of the more funny, like entertaining episodes as well. Now, as well as those things happening in the world this week, I saw a show on Sunday, which was fun. It was called One Man Musical, and I'm really into my musical theatre, so I saw a lot of it at the Fringe, and I've just seen many musicals through the years, and I've been in a number of musicals when I was at university as well. So I was in Rent and Spring Awakening and Jerry Springer the Opera, which, if you don't know it, is an absolutely fantastic piece of work. A lot of people hated it at the time, which is why it got cancelled and basically never performed. But I was playing the role of the devil, which, thinking back on it, is kind of ironic, considering I now sing a lot of songs which are kind of slightly more religious. But it's a great show. But I went to see One Man Musical, which was really fun. It's basically a parody of Andrew Lloyd Webber, and it kind of paints him out as being a bit of a maniacal figure who it's a fun look at Andrew Lloyd Webber's life, basically. And it's written by Flo and Joan, who are a very funny musical comedy duo. And so that was great. I went with a friend for that, and then I saw some friends. I went to a really fun get together on Friday night with a band that I used to sing with, which is Truly Medley Deeply. And I sang with Truly Medley Deeply for many years, all the way back to 2013. And I did lots of weddings and parties, and I think I did about 750 gigs with the group, something like that. But anyway, it used to be just two of us, but it's been franchised and a lot more people do it now. So a lot of the guys got together and we just had a big sing-along, which is very wholesome. And I filmed a few clips from that and put it online, which is great. And I just put it like, he's probably out cheating. He's probably out with the boys cheating. And then it's like the boys, and we're all singing like the Backstreet Boys and Tina Turner and various other things. But that was really, really fun. And I actually have a question for you guys, because talking of going to see shows and stuff, I put out a question on Instagram when I went to see a gig the other day on my own, just because it was a band that I used to like growing up. It was like an emo band that I think not really many people that I know were really into that kind of music, but I was. And so they were touring a couple of weeks ago, and I just went on my own because I thought, you know what, I'm free tonight, and I would have quite liked to have seen them when I was about 14 years old. So let's just live out my 14-year-old dreams of going to see this band. So I did, and it was really fun. And I thought one of the nice things about going to a show on your own, especially like a gig, like a rock gig, for example, is that you can just kind of move about. You're not worried about what other people are thinking. And so I put a question on my Instagram stories, which was, do you see shows alone? Do you go to see shows alone? And I had a lot of really interesting answers. A lot of people said yes, which is amazing. And a number of people said that they come to see my shows on their own. And I absolutely love that. And I've met a number of people that have come to see my show on their own. And what's nice about that is that it almost doesn't really matter if you're on your own, because especially with the shows that I've been doing, I've been kind of building up like a community choir in a way you could call it. All people that sing in choirs come, but everyone gets involved, and for one night only, you are the choir of the Assembly Bangers choir of that town and that venue. And even if you are on your own, I've seen people making friends at the shows, which has been really great. And I've seen people come on their own and then bump into people they know and all that kind of stuff. But it is a really interesting thing, because there's a lot of stigma about doing stuff on your own, I think, like going to the cinema on your own, seeing a show on your own. But I mean, really, it doesn't matter that much if you are on your own, because you're not really, hopefully, going to be chatting throughout it anyway. So I think it's great, because it does take a lot of courage, actually, to just, travel somewhere, take public transport or get in your car and drive off on your own and come to see something. But in a way, there's something quite nice and refreshing about it, because I've definitely seen a lot of shows and a lot of comedy shows and all that kind of stuff. And halfway through the show, I keep looking over at the person I'm with and thinking, are you enjoying this? Are you enjoying this as much as I am? And if they're not enjoying it as much as you are, then that actually brings you down a bit, because you think, oh, that's a shame. I hoped they would enjoy it as much as I did. But when you're on your own, you're like, okay, this is great. I don't care what anyone else says. And then you come home and read the reviews afterwards. Now, I had some, great messages. Mercury first said, yes, life is too short to wait around for other people. My Squares of Happy said, all the time I get the cheap single seats. Watched the Strictly live tour last night, and I've got a slight bugbear about single seats, trying to book a single seat online, because if there's a group of 3 seats and they're the only 3 seats, then you can't leave a spare seat or something, or let's say there's 2 seats and you just want to book one, you can't leave that one spare seat. Which is really frustrating. Theatre. So Manshaw 27 says, theatre shows quite a few. I'm not missing out if no one else wants to go. Exactly. Got to do your own thing. Helen Crocker says, go alone quite often. All my friends have kids and don't want to go out anymore. Very good point. So you just got to go for it yourself. Sarah J. Morgan says, yep, single 10 years now. If I waited for someone, I'd never leave the house. That is a fair point. You just got to go for it. I won't actually... Oh, yeah. Hillary Quinn says, yes, went to see Gareth Malone sing along on my own. That's great. I would have seen you there, I'm sure. And Simon said, yes, I went to yours in Edinburgh and Birmingham on my own. Had a great time. And anyway, lots and lots of messages from people saying how much they love going to shows on their own. Kalia says, you don't talk to anyone during the gig anyway. Yeah, absolutely. So... yeah, this is great. Lots of really nice messages. ML Garland said, I went to see Tom Rosenthal alone, bringing 2 friends to see you in December, but would have come alone. Fantastic. And someone else said, I really wish my anxiety would allow it. So yeah, it takes a lot of courage just to be like, do you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And if there's something you want to see, I usually, what usually happens is if there's something I want to see, I'll just book 2 tickets and then I might just end up going on my own anyway if I can't convince anyone to come with me. But then there is also that element of, I want to go to this, I'm going to book 2 tickets, and then you have to convince other people to go. And that's the worst thing, because you're like, oh, this thing's going to be amazing. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, begrudgingly come along. Now, so thank you so much for all the replies to that question. Do you go to shows on your own? I say, do it, just do it. You're going to regret it if you're waiting for other people and they take too long and then it sells out or whatever. And also a massive thank you to anyone that has come to see my show on your own. I hope you have felt welcomed and that it was a safe space to just crack on and enjoy yourself and do some singing. Now, I've also got it's time for the Q&A section. This is the question of the day. I don't know why I've done it so low today. Let's do it a bit higher. This is the question of the day. Here we go. So, question number 1 from Bex C83. What did you have in your packed lunches at primary school? This is a very important question. So, if you missed out on one of the other questions, I think it was last week, which said, what was your favourite school dinner? And or maybe it was the first week. Anyway, my answer was we didn't have hot school dinners, so we had a packed lunch pretty much every day. And basically, the formula was soggy sandwich. No, not soggy sandwich. My mom's probably listening to this. A very nice sandwich, and a sandwich, a packet of crisps, a treat like a penguin bar or something, or like a Kit Kat or something along those lines. Sometimes a box of the raisins with the hot lady on it, the one that's got grapes in her hand, I think. The little red box. You know the one I'm talking about. And yes, she was hot. And like an apple or something. So about as standard a box as you can get. But obviously, with the crisps, you might have something very exciting like Space Raiders or Monster Munch or whatever we had. Okay, that was my packed lunch. I'm sure a lot of you had a very similar thing. But if you didn't, let me know. If you had something very rogue that you brought into school every day, let me know. I'd love to know. If you had something incredibly rogue that everybody hated or everybody wanted as well. What was the most sought-after thing in the packed lunch? I feel like one of the most sought-after things was a Dairylee Dunker Lunchable thing. So no, those are 2 different things, aren't they? So the Dairylee Dunker, you dunk the little breadstick into the cheesy thing, and then the Lunchables, you had the crackers and you put the things that were not ham and not actually cheese and stack them on top of each other. Okay, so this is, I feel like, a bit of an admin question. Henry Totterdale has asked, do you provide words for the songs at Assembly Bangers? And the answer is yes. So at the show, when you come, there will be some posters around with big QR codes. All you need to do is scan the QR code. It will come up with a digital song sheet, a PDF, that automatically goes onto your phone, and you will have all the lyrics straight there on your phone. So I have printed out some large print versions for people that need it in the past. I am planning on doing a big screen for the Christmas tour with all the lyrics and some fancy designs and some cool, I don't know, illustrations maybe along with it. For now, it's just been logistically quite tricky to actually bring a big screen around with me. And I did actually buy an overhead projector so I could bring it round. But I got a message just before the Christmas tour saying, I'm sorry, your overhead projector that you bought was kept in a warehouse which is flooded and now it's broken. So I never got to bring it on the tour, which is very sad. But maybe I will bring an overhead projector at some point. But to be honest, I think most of you will probably know the lyrics to most of the songs. And if you don't know the lyrics, you can do what you did at school and make them up. Or just throw your own versions in. Now, this is a really interesting question here. This is from AMC Marshall. She has asked, at what age should my daughter start the piano? She is 3 at the moment. Now, a lot of piano teachers would be out there thinking, no, I can't teach a 3-year-old, which is fair enough. That is very young to start teaching someone, having kind of piano lessons. But I think that from a very early age, you can start learning piano in some form, because even at the age of 3, while doing kind of sat down half an hour lessons might not be the best move. I think there is a lot you can do. So the lessons will be a bit more about fun and a bit more about exploring the actual keyboard. You can kind of develop generally, I mean, at that age, they're still kind of developing motor skills. So there's the element of, can you play one note after another? Developing, so the kind of basic motor coordination, rhythm and listening skills. So you can do some fun clapping games. You can do some listening games like, here's a note. Can you play that note back to me? That kind of thing. And I think, to be honest, at the age of 3, there's only so much that they can take in and so much they can focus. So the main thing is about kind of just developing an ear for music, sparking that interest in learning the piano, and laying the foundation for future learning. So there are lots and lots of things that you can do. So you can do, you can put like color-coded keys. So you can put stickers on the keyboard. You can do, as I said, simple rhythm games. You can experiment with high and low notes and different kind of volumes on the piano, the dynamics. But at the end of the day, it's just about fostering that love for music and the love for maybe playing the piano. So hopefully that's a good answer. And in terms of actual sat down in-person piano lessons, I think from the age of 5 or 6, they might be able to start really getting into it. I think I started piano lessons when I was 6. There we go. So that's a little answer to when to learn the piano. Now, Charlotte Moran has asked, what's the favourite thing about the Isle of Man? Because I am coming over to the Isle of Man, and I had an amazing time on the Isle of Man. I'll get into it another time. But it was a very, very rowdy couple of shows that I did on the Isle of Man last March, and I'm going to be back this year in the main room, which is massive. But it was a lot of fun. I even had people on shoulders, and they had to get security to stop people getting on the stage. It was basically a rock gig. But the Isle of Man was great. The energy was so good. I can't wait to come back and see that energy again. They also had a really good song, which was, oh, the Laxine wheel keeps turning, 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 in Lady Arabella's memory. Something like that. Now, I don't know if anyone apart from Charlotte is listening on the Isle of Man, but if you are, can't wait to see you again there. Now, what's your favourite? I had a text, actually. By the way, in the show description, there's a link to where you can send a text in. I don't really know much about it, but it's called Fan Mail, I think, and it comes through onto the directory where the podcast is hosted. I had a text, and it said, what's your favourite primary school memory? And that's a very big question, but I'm going to be very niche with my answer. And at my primary school, it was in a fairly kind of average suburb of Poole in Dorset, so the school itself was just a normal primary school, but we were very lucky because the area before it got built on used to be a big orchard, and part of that orchard was in the back of this primary school. So while the school itself had the normal kind of playground that you would expect from a primary school, we also had this incredible orchard in the back. And we used to put on plays there. And I even remember in year 3, we did a production of Midsummer Night's Dream. I was very sad because I didn't get to play Oberon, but I wasn't tall enough. They had the tallest kid in the year playing Oberon. But we had sports days there. You did the throwing of the bean bags and egg and spoon races. And we had lots of lessons where we'd go and see the mini beasts in the garden and stuff like that, and we had a little pond. And honestly, I know, for a very normal primary school in a suburb of Poole, kind of a, I don't know, like a lower middle class area of the town, I guess it would be. It was great. We had this amazing resource in the back of the school, which was the orchard. So I wonder if any of you guys had any kind of quirky or interesting things about your school that kind of made it slightly different to the others. Now, okay, so Mrs. Ashcroft has asked, where does your passion for music come? And that has to be from, of course, my parents. My dad loves music. He's a massive music fan. Introduced me to all sorts of bands and artists. His favorite bands range from Genesis to Beatles to like newer bands that he's really into. So David Bowie. And so that was very influential. And they took me to a lot of piano lessons growing up. So I think that really kind of sparked my love for music and just encouraged us to get involved with music and singing and joining choirs and all that kind of stuff. Now, I also had an email through to this podcast email address, which is notesfromschoolpodcast@gmail.com. And the question was about having any guests on the show. And yeah, I will definitely be doing guests. And I want to do kind of like a mixture of guests, maybe people that are in entertainment now, but also maybe people that are in education as well. So, and talking to people about their experiences of school. Eventually, I think what I'll do is a once a month guest speaker at the assembly where they talk about their school experiences. And it's time for a coffee. Okay. Now, one question I got sent in, which I am going to answer in the next episode, was talking about the tune for Love Divine or Love's Excelling. And that made me think, what are the best wedding hymns out there? What are the best wedding tunes? And I'm actually going to get into it next episode. I might actually even dedicate the whole of next episode to the best songs you can choose for a wedding. So if you have any, actually, I would love you, if you have a favorite hymn that you had at your wedding, send it through to me and I'll compile maybe a top 10 or even a top 5 of the best wedding tunes, and maybe even talk about wedding bands and things like that. Now, let's get into the time for a song. It's time for a sing-along. And last week, I talked about Give Me Oil in My Lamp. This week, we're going to be going on a bit of a historical journey back in time. This is very exciting. And when I was talking about Give Me Oil in My Lamp, I was talking about how assembly singing and a lot of the songs we sing are part of almost like a new folk tradition, and how we remember, most of us around the UK, a lot of us remember these songs growing up, and we can all kind of connect with each other through our memory of the songs. And that links into the folk tradition of the past, where people would pass down songs from person to person by word of mouth. And it made me think that it's quite funny, because a lot of the teachers, well, when I was growing up, we had this bit of an ex-hippie teacher who taught us a lot of these folk tunes. But a lot of people didn't grow up singing songs from Come and Praise, which I've got here, which I sang from, which is the Blue Book with the faces on. And a lot of people actually did something called Singing Together, which was a weekly broadcast on the BBC, which everyone had booklets for. I've got the booklets up here somewhere. And basically, this was 20 minutes every week where the teacher would turn the radio on and everyone would sing along to songs which were either written for the episode or were traditional folk songs. And that stopped. That went on for decades. That Singing Together program started after I think actually maybe even during the Second World War, with the evacuees going off to the countryside. But it went through all the decades, and a lot of people would have remembered singing along to these tunes from Singing Together. And it stopped in the early 2000s, along with a lot of assembly singing, which is very sad, but hopefully we can bring it back in some form. In a way, this is kind of why I wanted to do my show and do this podcast, is to bring back the love of singing together. And I don't know, I guess one of the reasons it stopped was it didn't really speak to the national curriculum at the time. So the idea of just sitting in a classroom or a hall, singing, listening, and joining with others in music, it was not really regarded as a good enough learning experience, so it was cut. But I think just the weekly or daily singing sessions, it can really kind of switch on something in your mind and think, maybe I can do this myself, maybe I can keep singing. But there's a huge link with the folk tradition, and a lot of the songs that singing together would have been sung for centuries. And today, in today's sing-along, I'm going to dive into a song called My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. I'm going to sing you the first verse of it now. I'm sure a lot of you know this one. So if you remember this one growing up, let's sing it together. It is My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. Here we go. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. My Bonnie lies over the sea. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. So bring back my Bonnie to me. Here's the chorus. Bring back, oh bring back my Bonnie to me, to me. Bring back, oh bring back my Bonnie to me. There we go, what a tune. And I know that there are obviously a lot of parody versions of that, and I'm sure at your school you may have had your own alternate lyrics. But where does this song come from, and why is it important for today's assembly? Now, I'm going to be telling you a little story, taking you back through the decades, because that song, while it sounds quite upbeat, is about something quite dramatic and quite life-changing for many people. And a lot of my pupils sing My Bunny Lies Over the Ocean, but it's not about a rabbit, it's about a person. And the Bonnie refers to a prince, Prince Charles, and not the one you're thinking of. It was it was Prince Charlie, or he was sometimes known as the Great Pretender, Charles Stuart, and he was the grandson, I believe, of James II. And after Elizabeth I died, she died famously without an heir, so the throne had to go over to James I, who was the King of Scotland, and that's where the Scottish link comes in. And through the generations, James II was he was another Scottish king, one of the Stuarts, and he was deposed in the Glorious Revolution. But the Glorious Revolution, it was not so glorious for a lot of people who still supported the Stuarts, and they became known as the Jacobites. And that's where this song comes in, because it was not a great time for the Scottish. There had been a bit of a uprising because the Jacobites wanted to put Bonnie Prince Charlie on the throne, because he was, in their eyes, the rightful king. And he, through the right of God, I suppose, was the person that they believed should be on the throne. And the Scottish took advantage of the fact that the English army was doing a lot of fighting in Europe at the time. And so in order to get him back on the throne, they kind of marched through towns and cities, and they made it all the way down to Derby, actually, before getting routed and turned back. And this whole rebellion against the English came to a conclusion in 1745, when there was a big war, and they basically lost a lot of battles, very sadly for them. And the kind of culmination of this happened on April the 16th, 1746, on Culloden Moor, and which is near Inverness in the north of Scotland. And the Jacobites were finally defeated. Prince Charles, Bonnie Prince Charlie, he fled for his life, and he fled to the Outer Hebrides. And while he'd lost a lot of the support of his followers, he still had some hardcore supporters, one of whom was called Flora MacDonald. And if you don't know that name, she was someone that basically smuggled him out of Scotland, out of the mainland of Scotland, and over the sea to the Isle of Skye. Okay, and so that also links into another song. Now, at the time, there was a £30,000 price on his capture, on his head, basically. But a lot of his really keen supporters defied the call for him to be captured and taken back to London. And Flora she felt sorry for him, so she arranged for him to be smuggled out of Scotland, dressed as her maid, called Betty Burke, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Bonnie Prince Charlie was disguised as an Irish maid. And so Flora and a number of other men, including Bonnie Prince Charlie, they fled for Skye. And from Skye, he then went on to France, and his life the rest of his life was spent in France. And that was the end of his story, really, in the part of the coming back to the English throne. And there are a lot of retributions. Now, that time was a very potent time for folk singing. and for songs. And so loads and loads, I'm sure hundreds of songs came out of that era. And some of them were written at the time, some of the melodies came from the time, some of them were written afterwards. And My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean was written from the Jacobite perspective of singing about their missing prince who was so far away. And obviously, if they were heard singing about Prince Charlie, there may have been bad consequences. So they sang about him as their Bonnie, which is why My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean was written as it was. And I thought it was about, I thought it was about like a love in the past. I thought it was about someone that was in love with someone called Bonnie or something like that. But it was about Bonnie Prince Charlie. And he's been gone for hundreds of years, but people still sing this tune. And we've got the lyrics are, I blow you winds over the ocean, bring back my Bonnie. Last night as I lay on my pillow, I dreamt that my Bonnie was dead. And all that kind of stuff. So it's very dramatic. But there are two other songs that I want to talk about today because they link into this story. And one of them kind of takes it back to the beginning of the tale, and it's called Charlie Is My Darling. Okay, Charlie Is My Darling. Now, Charlie Is My Darling is a title you might recognize, and I'm going to play you a little bit of this song right now. And it goes like this. Charlie is my darling, my darling, my darling. Charlie is my darling, the young chevalier. So young chevalier meaning young soldier, I guess. 'Twas on a Monday morning, right early in the year, when Charlie came to our town, the young chevalier. Oh, Charlie is my darling, my darling, my darling. Charlie is my darling, the young chevalier. And so it tells his story about marching through the streets, the pipes are playing, and all the people gathered around him. They came running out, they left their bonny Highland hills, and they draw the sword for Scotland's Lord. And it was not a happy outcome for any of them. And that leads me on to the next tune that links in with this, which is called the Skye Boat Song. And the Skye Boat Song is talking about Bonnie Prince Charlie leaving Scotland and going over to the Isle of Skye for safety. And if you are a fan of the TV show Outlander, you might recognise it from that. So it goes, speed bonny boat like a bird on the wing, onward the sailors cry, carry the lad that's born to be king, over the sea to Skye. Great song. Now, that was the traditional version of it, but there were some new lyrics written by Robert Louis Stevenson of Treasure Island and Jekyll and Hyde fame, and that was the Outlander theme tune, and it went, sing me a song of a lad that is gone, say could that lad be I? Merry of soul he sailed on a day, over the sea to Skye. And there are a lot of very dramatic lyrics about loud the winds howl and they roar, and baffled our foes stand on the shore, follow they will not dare. And it does tell the story of the battle, actually, and him escaping. And the very sad end that a lot of the Scottish met. Now, there's one more tune that kind of links as a bit of a conclusion to those three songs about the Jacobite rebellion of 1745, 1746, and it's called Loch Lomond. Some of you may have been to Loch Lomond, some of you may live near Loch Lomond, but it's a absolutely beautiful tune. And again, I didn't really know the story behind it, but it's coming off the back of the Jacobite rebellion. It's talking about one of the soldiers that had been captured by the English, but the lyrics are quite kind of a bit more poetic. By yon bonny banks and by yon bonny braes, where the sun shines bright on Loch Lomond, where me and my true love will ever want to be, on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond. You'll take the high road and I'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland before you. But me and my true love will never meet again on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond. Now, just from those lyrics, you don't necessarily get the whole kind of story. You kind of think it might be a love story between a young lover and his lass, which is a good trope for folk tunes throughout the years. But it is actually, according to legend, it's the subject's about a Scots soldier who'd been caught and condemned to death during the rebellion, and the low road that he's talking about is actually the road that kind of refers to that where his soul will take to Scotland after his death. You will take the high road in life. I'll take the low road in death. So very sad. He's in a prison cell singing about this. It's a beautiful tune. I'm just going to sing you a little bit now. And if you know this one, feel free to sing along. By yon bonny banks and by yon bonny braes, where the sun shines bright on Loch Lomond, where me and my true love were ever wont to be, on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond. Oh, you'll take the high road and I'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland afore ye, but me and my true love will never meet again, on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond. Beautiful tune. And there we go. And that was a little journey back in time, back to Scotland. And it did make me think of the shows I did in Scotland this summer at the Edinburgh Festival, which I absolutely loved. And I can't wait to come back across the border to Scotland again one day. And there we go. I hope you enjoyed a slightly more historical version of Notes from School today. As this is an assembly, it is an educational show. So I hope you enjoyed the little history lesson. And I'm sure a lot of you have memories of singing those songs at school, whether it be in the school assembly or part of singing together. And if you are from Scotland and I pronounced or any of the words wrong and I got any of the history wrong, then I do apologise. Feel free to write in and I will have a very hefty correction section next week, I'm sure. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening. It's been an absolute privilege and pleasure having you in the Assembly Hall this week. And as ever, if you want to leave me a message, notesfromschoolpodcast@gmail.com is the email, or send me a message on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. This is also being recorded on YouTube if you want to watch it. But in the meantime, it's time to say goodbye for this week. Keep smiling, keep singing, and I'll see you for our assembly again next Wednesday. Class dismissed.